Hello, everyone. Welcome to Broadcast Solutions Innovations Day. This is the last day, the final day of the Broadcast Solutions Innovations Days. And today we'll be hearing from Bridgetech, a monitoring company. Now, what does monitoring do? Well, it makes sure that the signal works perfectly from the production, where the video and audio are perfect, flows all the way correctly to the viewers. And we will today hear about the first part of that monitoring cycle, where Mr. Seaman Frostad, who's the chairman of Bridgetech, will present the VB440, quite a nifty device. And he will be talking to us from their IP studio and master control room in Oslo, Norway. So over to you, Seaman.
Thank you, Petri. Let me first thank you for being here. It's very good of you, and congratulations on the Innovation Days. Brilliant. And of course, welcome here to Oslo, to our IP-based studio. And we are going to try to give you a short glimpse of the capabilities of the system, and then also what kind of relevance it has for real studio production. As you know, IP has come quite a long time ago, and now we really need to be comfortable with IP. And that is the kind of key thing that we want to make sure of, that people are comfortable with IP and that they actually can utilize this to benefit their own production. If I talk too fast, then don't hesitate to give Petri some messages. If you have questions, then please send in the questions and we'll answer them to the best of our abilities. The more difficult, the better. So don't be afraid. Let's just dive into it. I have the VB440 demo system here, so let's just go for it. And as you can see, we have now the starting page, which basically is a web browser. This is a Chrome web browser. It's a very, very nicely written HTML5 code. As you can see, we have real-time video here. Right now, I'm playing back a 3-hour-long stream from NRK, which basically, as you can see here, is a 1080p 50 stream. You have then, of course, the 2 channels of audio. Here it's 2 channels of 48 kilohertz, and we also have ancillary data, providing the time code you can see here. And we also have 2 separate sources. We have the primary and the secondary. Make a note that when I actually switch these sources, you switch the viewer. So then you're actually watching is on the secondary video when I do like this. So it's pretty cool. And of course, you have the audio meter here as well. I can just go and try to basically get a different source. Here I have a different source again. I can switch to one of the other sources. This is actually 720p 50. And again, as you can see, it will automatically also, display what's there. This is normal SD22 2022-6. So this is actually then a progressive P5994 signal with 16 channels of audio, as you can see here. And it's got the ancillary data as well. So as you can see, just by the notion of the picture here on the left, you can actually follow through on what's actually happening. Then we can go to the rest of the status page, and it's quite dominant what you see here. This is what we call the media window, and this is the micro media window. And the micro media window displays then the status of the channel. As you can see, it looks pretty green all over, except we do have had some packet loss, which is introduced artificially on the Matrox for video on the secondary stream. Here you can see it. Here you can see it. Here comes an error, and you can see that here is actually 1 packet error. So that's not good, but thank goodness we have basically a primary and a secondary feed. of the video. We do have the same on the audio, as you can see here. And of course, we have a primary and secondary of the ancillary data as well. So we have full protection with the SD 2022-7 protection mechanism. And the key thing there is to basically be able to have all these streams, you know, in good and in a good format, so that everything can then be analyzed. So let's go more into the details here. You can see that this is 2110 video -20, which of course is the video part of it, and you can see that the resolution here is 1920 times 1080, 69. It's got 50 frames, and of course the color sampling and everything is good. This is a 3 gigabit signal, but as you know, it's not all 3 gigabit. It's actually 2.18 gigabit, only the video. But you know, you have some audio there, and you have, of course, some bitrate from the ancillary. So it's about 2.2 gigabit, and that's actually the real stream. So we can go further deep in. Let's go into the network view, where you can actually then go and see. Let's go into detail on the stream that has been acting up. And here you can see the media window a bit clearer. It's a bit bigger. And you can see that here and here it's been actually packet loss. And the key thing with the media window is that that gives you an indication about the jitter values on the network. And you know, we must remember that in the network, it's several things that can cause packet loss. One of the most important things to cause packet loss is network jitter, because a jitter is basically the difference between the space between the packets. So if the packets come irregularly, then of course the network will be very jittery, and sometimes it will exceed the buffer's ability to rescue that. And remember, in a narrow configuration on 2110, the input buffer on a receiver device is just 8 frames. So, sorry, 8 packets, which is nothing. And that means that if you then have excessive jitter, which actually exceeds the packet rate, well, then you will lose packets. So keeping, you know, a tidy and very nice touch about jitter is very, very important. So let's return to the media window. Here you can see that the normal jitter values is below 10 microseconds, which is very, very good for this kind of signal. We can see that it kind of leaves some jitter here, which is maybe 12 microseconds. Not a problem. This signal is fine, except for the packet loss. And of course, I must confess, the packet loss we have here is something we artificially have introduced just to have the demonstration ability to show you packet loss. So this is not something I worry too much about, but if you see it on your own system, it's dangerous. And this packet loss is caused by the sender. It's not caused by the network itself, because the jitter values, the transmission values is beautiful. The network has nothing to fear about this. But as you can see, we have another window just under the media window, which is the actual packet transport. And this is the inter-arrival time. It's a histogram, but in time. So you have actually then the real display of how it works. If you think about it as the more luminance, the more packets. So you can see that the majority of the packets actually being transmitted is about 3 microseconds and some about 8 microseconds. And then, of course, since in an ideal world it's not possible to space packets exact, it will be some variances, but this is well within the standard. This is very, very good. Again, you can do this analytics on any stream or any flow as part of the service. Here we have the audio flow, and as you can see, it's 1 millisecond of continuous, very tight latency. And here you see the packet spread. This is beautiful. This is exactly an audio stream like we want it. And here you can see the ancillary data, which basically is up to 20 milliseconds, because again, the data rate is so low that there's nearly no data there as well. Here you have a lot of nifty analytics, so that basically you can say your maximum inter-arrival time on the whole segment since you started to monitor is 41 milliseconds. That's fine. The maximum bitrate is 2.50 gigabit. That's nice, etc. So you have some nifty stuff. But this is not the end of what you can do with timing. And you know, there is a lot of timing stuff you can analyze. So if you go to the timing page, you'll see that you can go even deeper. First, you have the path delay, and the path delay will, first of all, it will highlight, you know, if I cut out all the other streams, it'll just show you the path delay for video primary. You can then see it against video secondary. And as you can see, it's so accurate, both the primary and the secondary, that it is difficult to see a difference between them. And they're all around 744 microseconds. And you know, path delay is a very nice thing to have, because path delay is the exact time from the sender that basically then you have locked the sender to a PTP source. And then that exact timestamp is then validated against our measurements. So we'll see the exact time that it takes for a signal to travel from the sender all the way to our measurement device. This is extremely useful because, again, it will show you the latency, the real objective latency in the network, but also the latency factors containing the synchronization between audio and video. Let me show you. And the key thing here is that if I turn on the audio, you'll see that it's perfectly aligned, because as soon as these things actually step out of alignment, you'll see immediately that it will be sloping. And that will signal again to you that no, something is not locked to themselves, and that means that your audio source may not be locked to the same source as the video source, which is again a very dangerous combination. So path delay can be very useful for a lot of things. Of course, we have the other things. This is the Rtp Align for the first packet, and the Rtp Align is actually very interesting, because we talk about PTP quite a lot for the synchronization, but we must also remember that PTP is not alone in this, because you also need to align the physical grid. So when you start sending the first pixel of the full pixel grid from, let's say, a camera, that first pixel better be sent at the same time as the other camera's first pixel, or else it will be misaligned when it actually hits the picture switcher or the recorders. So the key thing here is that the analytics for Rtp will say if you're aligned. As you can see here, this is perfectly aligned, couldn't be better, which is exactly what we want. And here you will see basically also that the first packet time, if that is different from then your path latency and path delay, it will be very visible here. And of course, here you have the first packet time margin in microseconds. This is beautiful. This is between 1 microsecond, and actually it looks like it's about a couple of hundred of nanoseconds. This is perfect. This is exactly how you want your signal. You can, of course, go into the 5 minutes and see the last 5 minutes of this, or you can actually stay with the 30 seconds and get a faster kind of view. Let's move on to the virtual receive buffer. And in the virtual receive buffer measurements, we've done this because, you know, you probably heard about the narrow transmitters and the wide transmitters. And there is even something that is in the middle of here, which is both a bit wide and narrow. But the difference between a narrow transmitter and a wide transmitter is that in broadcast terms, we only use narrow. And that means that it's very little buffering, it's very, very little latency, because we don't want latency at all. But in the IT world, when you deal with computers, they need slightly more buffering, and basically that's why we have wide. And the reason why we have then the virtual receive buffer measurements is to be able to very, very fast discern, is it a narrow or is it a wide signal? Here you can see immediately that this is a very, very narrow signal. Pretty cool. It's actually within then the buffer fillings can actually go under 6 packets. You can see that 6 packets is the absolute maximum of variation that we had. That is not a problem. That's well within the buffer capabilities that we have. And you also have underflow and overflow of these buffers that will be measured, so that if you have then events that actually forces you to use the buffer, it's very nice to know, because if that exceeds, of course, a certain point, well, the buffer will stop and cease to work, and it will drop packets, which is not a good idea. Then, of course, you have network burstiness as well. And network burstiness is kind of interesting. And the reason there is that one thing is the jitter that can be introduced in the network. But you can also get aggravated jitter if the sender actually is bursty. Because if the sender is bursty, the network will not actually help. It will only make it worse. So the key thing with being able to measure the burstiness of the sender is to discern, is the network actually contributing to this weird kind of jittery pattern I see, or is it the sender? And if you know that, well, then you know who to blame. So the key thing here with network burstiness, again, is part of the timing ability to see. So we're very proud of all these kind of measurements. It's a lot of them. You know, every single signal shows different characteristics, and that means that it's pretty important to have deep analytics so that you exactly know what to expect, how it actually works. You can go even deeper, and here in the middle we have capture. And capture, well, that's exactly the same that I know that you thought that is a PCAP capability. And with the PCAP capability, you can choose if you only want one of the flows, or you can actually say that I want to capture everything. And we can also capture the PTP traffic, which is very, very good. And you can set your own packet limits to nearly as high as you want. And then you can do a new capture. Here I did it. It's already here. You have some details so that basically you can see exactly what you've captured. On this packet capture over here, I only did the video secondary. But then again, if I open up the last I did, here you can see that I took the absolute whole stream. And why do you need a packet capture? Well, a packet capture can be extremely nice to send back to vendors, just to have proof that, you know, well, there was an error, and here you got a packet capture so that you can see the error. And the cool thing is, everybody on the planet Earth can open a PCAP in Wireshark. Let me just download this and open it in Wireshark. Okay, I'll skip this version. As you can see, it's just under a second, and then I have my capture, which I did on the dual 100 gig interfaces on 3 gigabit of signal, and I can then go into analytics bonanza. Here I can go crazy and actually see exactly what is been going on with as much detail as I want. So as you can see, the packet capture feature is believe me, it's very, very relevant, and of course, very, very nice to have. Have we forgotten this? Up until now, we only talked about packets. Well, there is more to video than packets, because if you go higher level, we have the video signal itself. And let me show you some tools we have to actually do that. And then we have, of course, the video, where we have a waveform, vector, diamond scopes. We have, of course, the ability to go into audio. And here you can see a LUFS meter as well that we have implemented. Momentary, short-term, or the integrated long-term mathematical loudness can be done. But before I give you more detail on all these beautiful tools as well, let's go to one more that I kind of forgot, and that is the packet flow. And You know, in every single network that we have, or every single network that I've seen of in production, you always build two network segments, either routed or non-routed, so that you have protection. And that's the ST2022-7 protection mechanisms that actually have then the same data on two different networks. If the network fails, it just continues on the other network. And here you can see some of the metrics about that. Here's the primary feed, and here's the secondary feed. They look very much the same, but as you can see on the secondary, we have some packet loss. And this is packet loss events that is not a problem, because as you can see, the protection status has actually seen that it has been protected since what date is it today? It's 5th of November. This is actually been protected by the 3rd of November at 1 o'clock in the morning. So since then, the network has been protected, everything has been fine, because if you lose packets on one of these circuits, it doesn't matter, because it's got two separate circuits. So here you can see some analytics on this. You can see that 87% of the packets is received first on the primary, and 13% is then received first on the secondary. That means that your receiver will then use 13% of the packets from the secondary, and of course 87% of the primary. Let's switch to audio just to see that this is a bit more dynamic. In audio, we're actually using 70% of the packets from primary and 25+% of the secondary. On ancillary data, it's a bit different. And remember, ancillary data is very little data. So here we actually use more on the secondary, actually. And you also have down here the path differential. And the path differential tells us how much distance is between those paths when it actually goes to selection mode. And right now, it's actually around 200 nanoseconds. That's not a problem. Those two paths are extremely aligned. Doesn't matter which circuit it chooses its packets from. Here on the audio, you can see that we're about 2 microseconds. That's perfect. That is absolutely not a problem. And of course, on the video, you can see that we're about, okay, 4 down to 1. Okay, maximum is 4 microseconds. That's fine. Because another kind of thing about the protection is that if it's not aligned anymore, if suddenly the one path is way ahead of the other, then suddenly you don't have protection anymore. Because if you then lose that path and switches, there is no packets to take over that feed. And that means that basically you lose protection and you will have a glitch. So keeping the two protected streams basically aligned is very, very important, especially if you're running them through, again, different networks, because, again, suddenly a network may introduce delays and latency issues, and then you're in trouble. So this one is very, very good analytics to be able to discern that. So I will be able to talk about this because it's one of my favorite things ever, forever. But Petri, I must say, is there any questions about this?
Well, Seaman, that's good of you to ask. And there is one question which has come up, and they've asked to elaborate a bit more on the auxiliary or ancillary data, because modern video feeds contain all kinds of aspect ratio info, subtitling, what have you, and often it's very hard to know if those are causing the problems or if they're at least correct.
Absolutely, and you're so right, because one of the things with 2110 is that it disconnects a lot of the ancillary data structures with the video or the audio structures. So the video is actually just very close to a raw video feed without a lot of detail. The same with the audio, which is AES67. And that means that we then must use the ancillary data channel to signal some of these kind of things. So to be honest, let's jump straight into it. We know from the status page that we have, quite a lot of ancillary data on this one. So let's go to ancillary. And that means that we can see here that we got in basically, we still talk about line, even though it makes no sense in 2110, but I like it kind of. It's back to the old style. And you can see here that we have AFC and bar data. We have some closed captioning here, which is basically based around the CE 708 standard. And of course, we have time code, which is very, very important for us. And we have diverse payload identification codes that basically then tells us that this is then a 1080 inline video payload with level A signaling on 3 gigabit SDI. So all these things are extremely valuable for you because, again, since you are separating the ancillary data from the physicality of the video data, sometimes that may not. Let's say that you have a problem that is not signaled correctly. So you have the wrong ancillary data to the wrong video. Then this one is very, very handy. It will tell you immediately what type of signaling it should give exactly. And there you go. I feel like showing you some small other things because I showed you you know, all this about video. That's kind of nice. This then you can go and switch through all the different kind of sources. You have shortcut sources here. As you can see, it's very, very, very fast video. And one thing I must say is that all the measured video comes from 200 gigabit ports, which is connected then to the primary and the secondary network. And from the time that we measure that video to it's displayed here on my HTML5 video, you know, web browser, it's less than 2 frames. And that means that you have very, very little latency in that. And that means, again, that you can actually utilize this for real time wherever you are, because one thing is that we are then having our lab 3 floors up, but if you're on the other side of the planet, it's just HTML5, so you can access it. That's one of the most important features, especially now that we're more or less forced into remote production. So you think that is, I try to cover as much space as humanly possible in the shortest amount of time. Do you think it's okay, Petri?
Well, thank you, Simon, for a, a roller coaster of a presentation, I must say. And so hopefully our listeners and viewers got a good understanding of what the Bridgetech VB440 can do. And all I can say at the end is, once again, thank you, Seaman. And if anybody wants to know more about the VB440 or other Bridgetech solutions, just contact your closest Broadcast Solutions representative, and we'll be happy to tell you more. So thank you again, everyone.
And thank you, everybody listening. And thank you, Petri, for hosting me. That was very, very, I loved it. So see you next time.